While considering the deep cultural connection to the jinn in Muslim countries, it might be tempting to take stories about the jinn as mere superstition. But Westerners have also had rather spooky alleged encounters with what appear to be the jinn as well. And a good source of such tales is the military presence in the Middle East. It seems there are numerous military personnel who claim to have had rather bizarre encounters with what seem to have been actual jinn, which have appeared to the witness to be far more than mere folklore and legend. One such report comes from June 2003 from a soldier who had been stationed in Mosul, Iraq, with the United States Army, in the infantry with the 101st Airborne. According to the witness, at the time of the incident, he had just been involved in helping to suppress a riot that had broken out with locals unhappy with the corrupt police force. In order to protect the police, squads were deployed at various police stations 24/7 for their protection, and the witness happened to be in one of the squads one evening, keeping watch on a three-story police building located in a cramped section of a town zigzagged by narrow roads barely wide enough to drive through. The witness described what happened on his watch thus. Myself and two other guys from my squad were sitting on the balcony of the second floor of the station putting security on our shift. It was sometime in the night. If I had to guess, I would say it was sometime around 02:30 hours. While on guard, we would use the lights on our rifles to illuminate any car that drove by so we could see if there were any sort of weapons in the vehicle and stuff like that. We heard a car driving towards us from one of the side roads of the mosque, so we got ready with our lights to illuminate the car when it came into view. Once we saw the car, we shined our lights into the vehicle, directing the light towards the driver. The driver had a typical reaction to the surefire light, which is blindingly intense, by squinting his eyes and attempting to look away from the light. The passenger had a much different reaction. His eyes seemed to glow with intensity by the light. He stared right back at the light, almost looking through it and at us. It was very eerie. At the time, the best we could describe his eyes were that of a cat in the dark with a flashlight shined in its face. I've never heard of a person's eyes being able to reflect light like that before, and anything you could purchase to do such things, especially in a second or third world country. Another possible report dealing with the jinn was relayed by a US soldier deployed to a place called FOB, Forward Operating Base Endurance, in Iraq, which was more or less composed of just some simple tents and airplane hangars that had been taken over from Iraqi forces. One feature of the camp was a sturdy concrete bunker that was fully equipped with metal blast doors. At some point during the deployment, the witness started a relationship with a female soldier, and they chose the bunker to have their private meetings because it was secure, with only one way in or out. And there was also the fact that since the camp's noisy generator was situated just outside, they could immediately hear if anyone opened the blast doors. However, the bunker trips would not last long after the two had a very strange encounter there. The witness would explain as follows. About the second night on, Sarah would wake me in the middle of the night telling me she was hearing something inside the bunker with us. At first, I attributed the noise she was hearing to hedgehogs, as that part of Iraq is lousy with them. I shrugged it off until I heard the noise. There was no doubt they were footsteps. The night before, the last night we stayed down there, I awoke to whisperings coming from the corner, which was followed by footsteps that approached my side of the bed. I woke Sarah and reluctantly turned my flashlight on, fearing what came next, but there was nothing. No body, no footprints, and worst of all, the blast door was closed just like we left it. The last night started with Sarah warning whatever was down there that we were not in the mood to be messed with and that we just needed our sleep. We both fell asleep as we reassured the other we were just hearing things. Again that night, Sarah woke me and we sat there in total darkness, listening to whispers coming from the corner. Two different voices, followed by footsteps approaching our bed, and then our bed violently shook for a couple of seconds, and then a tremendous sound as if a metal plate had just been dropped next to the bed. In our panic, it took me a good 45 seconds to locate the flashlight, but once on, there again was nothing with us. No footprints, no evidence of what made the loud clashing sound. That was our last night in the bunker. So, was this the work of jinn, ghosts, or just overactive imaginations? It's hard to say. In 2005, there was also a report of a soldier at FOB Warhorse in Iraq. The weird account is as follows. We had a generator Connex converted in an office. I was inside the Connex doing my water testing, and I heard the sound of someone walking on the rocks outside the Connex. I figured that maybe it was security coming by to check on things. I went outside and there was no one there and the sound stopped. The moon was bright that night and there was a light shining on the rocks from it. I saw the shadows of what looked to be spiked crescents zipping past my feet. I looked up and there was nothing flying around. These things were zipping real fast. Later I drove back to my LSA to get something. While I was backing up to park, someone started banging on the truck. I stopped immediately thinking that I had hit someone. I got out and looked. No one was there. This was about 4 a.m. I went to the bag farm to take some more samples and do a general check for water leaks. Between the last outermost bag and the Hescos, there appeared to be a small light dancing around. I walked over to that area and it stopped. When the new Roku site was completed, it was custom to get there before breakfast to start the generator to get the AC or heater working in the lab or office, and set out a clipboard at the distribution point before walking across the road to the DFAC for breakfast. As I left the office to go, I walked past the Roku connexes and I saw a man in a white tee sitting on his heels, leaning up against the connex. I started to go that way to see who it was and what he needed, but when I looked away and back again, he was gone. Nowhere in sight. In yet another possible encounter with the Jinn, an ex-army security guard working in Karachi, Pakistan in 2005 had quite the bizarre story to tell. He had been hired by some affluent families to guard a street in a more upscale district of the city, and one night something decidedly terrifying happened to him and neither he nor the families he worked for could explain. According to one member of the families that had hired the guard, the story goes as follows. Sometime past midnight, he was sitting in his chair when we were woken up by his screaming as he jumped over the gates of one house and entered in shock. Mind you, that this was a man armed with a repeater, a weapon with 12 rounds, automatic pumping action, something similar to Arnold's weapon in T2 while riding his bike. Upon inquiring, he kept on repeating the same story for 1 hour. He said that in an empty area between the two houses, he first saw a rabbit hopping right opposite to where he was seated. In an instant, the rabbit sort of transformed into a cat while moving towards him. As this was happening, he tried to dispel the event as an illusion. However, he was soon terribly shaken as the cat had now started taking the shape of a woman. He clearly described the transformation, and to the point where he saw the half-woman entity, he got so scared that he started screaming, and his legs, which were jammed, were able to find the strength to jump into action over the 6-foot gate into our neighbour's house. As far as I remember, he left his gun outside and we had to gather it later. Our neighbourhood remained in quite a state of shock and fear for quite some time after this event. The guard had been with us for nearly a year, and after this he was never the same guy again. Soon after, he swapped his duty roster with another guard. One retired remote viewer for the US military named David Morehouse wrote of his own experience in his book Psychic Warrior. According to Morehouse, he was stationed in Jordan in a desolate valley called Beten al-Ghul in order to take part in the training exercises with the Jordanian troops. The location was already spooky enough, with the valley long said to be prowled by demons and ghosts, even the name Beten el-Ghul itself having the sinister meaning of belly of the beast. Jordanian soldiers have often told of seeing demons stalking about in the wasteland, or even attacking people, and the whole valley is said to be a cursed place. But things would get strange for Morehouse when he sustained a head injury when he was accidentally shot in the helmet during a training exercise. Morehouse would go on to claim that the injury had left him with the ability to see Jinn, which he would report on thus. Sometime in the night, my eyes opened to a surreal light outside the tent. It was like the light of an eclipsed sun, and it wasn't coming from any stove. It filled the night sky. The entire Beten al-Ghul and the hills beyond it were bathed in a strange bluish-grey light. I walked to the edge of the bluff and stared into the valley. Dark figures moved effortlessly across its floor, like apparitions. They poured from the rocks in various heaps and shapes and moved about the clusters of tents. I could hear the muffled cries from the Jordanian encampment, and momentarily I thought we were being overrun by thieves or Israelis. Panicked, I turned to run for help. Colliding with one of the figures, I reflexively closed my eyes, except I didn't collide. I walked right through it. Turning around, I watched the figure disappear over the edge of the bluff. So, are the Jinn real? Are they actual entities that are described in Muslim lore or something else? Whatever the answers may be, these mysterious beings remain firmly entrenched within the cultures and traditions of these countries, and are very real to many of those who live there. It seems very curious that if they are mere constructs of superstition and religious beliefs, that they should be seen by foreigners who do not share this history steeped in such myths. What is going on here? Whether the Jinn are real or not, such cases present a curious clash between East and West and a bizarre peek into what happens when we confront the powerful paranormal beliefs and the moors of faraway lands. Indeed, perhaps when we come face to face with things beyond our culture and our understanding. And just for reference, this article was originally put together by Brent Swanser, who is an author and crypto expert living in Japan, and was featured on Mysterious Universe, the podcast and news aggregator of all things weird and wonderful. Please subscribe for more information on the Jinn, occult, and obviously photography. And thanks for watching.